Hey everybody, I'm Chris Van Hillo with the City of Tampa's Visual Arts team. Today we are going to work on wire wrapping and different jewelry techniques. So last week we worked using our round nose pliers to tie off loops that would allow us to attach our ear wires or to jump things. Here's a couple samples of some earrings that we made last week. So this little loop is what I'm referring to that we learned how to tie off. Before we get started today, I would like to talk about the different kind of pliers. I try to use the right terminology, and sometimes I get going so fast that I might be confusing. So everyone knows these are round nose pliers. It's pretty easy to tell because they're rounded, okay? These are bent nose pliers. They could also be considered needle nose pliers. They're really wonderful. They have a little spring that allows them to open. When you let go, they open. When you press, they close. I really like those. These are two different examples of, these are flat nose. So you can see they're flat on the end. It's two different sizes. So these are flat nose. I love the chain nose. These are probably my favorite. So they kind of come to a point. On the ends. Can you see that? I really like that. So the chain nose are great for working with chain, or if you're trying to get in really, really tight spaces. So today we are going to be using our chain nose. We're going to be using our round nose. We're going to be using our wire cutters. So I'm going to be using an 18 gauge. You need to have a really heavy duty pair of wire cutters for 18 gauge. And then sometimes you hear me call flush cut. Those are cutters that really allow you to get up close to something and cut it off. So these are nice little cutters. These are also fun little cutters because these also allow you to, I'm doing this all backwards and I'm trying to get into the frame, and it's not working very well, and I really don't like this shadow. I feel like I'm, making the dinosaur things on the wall, the little bunny with the ears. Okay, so I got to figure that out too. Okay, so anyway, we're going to get started on our projects that I did over the weekend. Ta-da! So, I made a necklace with a bracelet and a pair of earrings, okay? So I was going to go ahead and do this earring several months ago. I'm trying to think of when it was, but we did this little bracelet set, and what we did is we took our flat bead or stone, whatever you want to call it, and we just did our little loop on the end, and then we connected those loops, and then we just connected it all together to make our beautiful little bracelet, okay? And then the same thing with the earrings. We just did our little closed loop on the earring and added our ear wire, and we made matching earrings. So that was kind of fun. We did that several months ago in our crossover craft. Today, we're basically going to do the same thing. We're going to have our loop inside our stone. I think I got these. These might be Fire Mountain Gem. These could be Michael's. They're just little flat stones. I don't like big round balls on my arms because when I go to sign my name to something, I feel like my arm's, bent up. I'm not playing the piano, I'm trying to write. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our round nose plier. I've cut some 18 gauge artistic wire here. Get all this out of the way so you can see. And I like to use my body parts. I like to use my hands rather than a ruler. My middle finger is about 3 1/4 inches from here to here, okay? So rather than use a ruler, I try to put things up to my hands, and that way I'm somewhat consistent. I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to catch this at the very tip, and I'm going to roll this all the way around. I'm trying to get in the picture here. Roll it all the way around, and you can twist your arm, you can twist your hand, whatever is the best way for you to be able to get that around, and that's a really big loop, but I have a little loop there. Okay. We also talked about the jump ring tools, the wubbers, and I think this is actually beadsmith. This is not a wubber, this is a beadsmith. So on this coil, I'm going to have the coil facing me. And I'm going to have the pliers, the textured part of the plier away from me. Everybody see that? And I'm going to butt that loop right up to the end of my pliers. And now with my left hand, I'm going to rotate this while I push on that wire, and I just brought it around to make a loop. Now I'm going to have this, the textured part of the loops are going to be facing me. So the loops, the wire loops are always facing me, and the flat part is always going to be away from me. So it's going to look like this. The loops are going to be facing me, the flat part is going to be away from me. These shadows are, I don't know if you can actually see that, okay? The pliers, the things that are making the loops are always going to be away from me. Okay, so in my hand the loops face me, and in my tool the loops are away from me. I'm going to put that loop on the bottom all the way up to the end of my pliers, and I'm going to push this loop away from me and down, just facing the floor. Okay. When I take that out of there, I'm going to have something that looks like that. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to bring that little tag here on the end, I'm just going to wrap it around and bring it up like this one. So I might have needed to cut this wire a little bit larger. Okay, so here I am really holding down, and really, wow, I just put lotion on my hands and I can't really get a grip on this. Turn it and turn it, okay? Then I'm going to push that together, and that's how I made all these little loops, okay? The other thing that's kind of cool, I'm going to see if I can move the camera and show you this awesome little tool that I have here. This is a cool little tool that I got from Eurotool, and it's a, I don't know if you can see that, it's a combination anvil and bench pin. And what I like to do is I like to put my wire down, and I like to flatten it. So this is also a nice little hammer that I got that has a smooth end on one side, and then it has a textured end on the other side, and there's all these different texture pins that comes with. Okay, tighten that up. Watch your fingers. You can hammer this, and while you hammer it, you're actually hard working the wire, so it makes it more durable. Okay, I'm going to turn it over. Don't hit your finger, or you will scream like a little girl. Okay, you can also turn it over, which is kind of neat. And you can texture the wire. So, okay, and now this wire is a lot harder than it was before I started. So now I've made this little loop, and you can always tighten it up later if you need to. And this was the same, as you can see, it's the same loop I did here. You might want to practice this with some copper wire that's not quite as strong as this 18 gauge artistic wire. Again, this time I'm going to go a little bit longer, and I'm just going to show you that loop one more time. I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to take my round nose, and I'm really going to hold on to that, and I'm going to rotate that around while I'm holding on to the end, so I didn't let it go away, and I've got my little loop there. Then I'm going to have this loop toward me and my tool away from me. You can use either, if you want it to be a little bit smaller, you can use the, let's do that. You can use the loop down at the end here. So I'm going to use the first mandrel on here, and I'm going to twist this arm while I'm holding on to this piece of wire with my thumb. So I'm twisting and I'm bringing that wire around, and you can see I made that little loop. Now that loop is smaller than that loop because I used the smaller mandrel on these pliers. Okay. So now I'm going to have the loops facing me and the loops of the pliers away from me, and I'm going to put it on that middle loop, and I'm going to bring it up and over. Okay, now I have plenty of room at the end to make my loop. With my small round nose pliers, I'm going to grab onto that end right there. Holding tightly, I'm going to rotate this wire around, push that together a little bit more, not too much, and I have my pretty little loop. Now I can take that over to my anvil, whack-a-doo, 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 and I can hammer it, okay? And that's how I make my loop. So now that we have our loop made, we need to string our wire through our stone so that we can have two little ends to jump onto our loop. So I'm going to take some 22 gauge artistic wire, and I'm going to use my middle finger technique. I'm good with the middle finger technique. And I'm going to cut that off. Now I'm going to make my loop, and then I have to add my unicorn bead before I tie off my loop. I'm also going to go a little thicker down the plier because, you know, these graduate. So down here it's smaller. The loop would be smaller than if I go all the way up to the top. So I want to be consistent with what I already have, and I think I'm going to have about an inch here. And I'm not going to go all the way to the end, but I'm going to go a little more than in the middle. And I'm just going to push that away from me, rotate my plier, pick it up and over. Okay, and now I have my nice little loop there. And I'm going to grab my unicorn bead, feed it through there, and it has room to kind of jiggle around a little. I don't like it when it chokes them. Okay, so I'm going to try to put these pliers back in there, so now I can continue to push that tail parallel to the floor, and now I have that little L that I need. Everybody see the little L? Okay. Now I can either grab my chain nose pliers like this, and I think that's what I'm going to do. This 22 gauge you should be able to manipulate easily with your hands, and if not, just grab another pair of pliers and just try to lay it down. I think when I use pliers, it's a much neater wrap than when I do it with my fingers, and because this is all spacey here. Okay, that's good enough. Nobody gets that close to my ears anyway. Okay, I'm going to cut that little tail off. Okay, so now I have this pretty little dangle. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, now I'm going to feed this through my stone. And then I just need to close off my loop at the top. So again, look at what it is you're trying to copy and make sure you haven't forgotten any steps. So got my there, got my there, got my there. Okay, so I'm going to have plenty of wire left over, which is fine. Okay, so I'm going to go away from me, turn my pliers, bring it up and over, put the bottom rung through, parallel with the floor, And now I'm going to hold this with the chain nose and try to be really, really careful in wrapping this so that it's nice and tight. Put one right on top of the other. That's a good girl. Right on top of the other, okay? You can twist it around with your finger. Now I have plenty. Good thing I'm not... Now why is that tight down there? Uh-oh, there it is. It just got caught. Okay. Behave yourself. Okay, I'm going to take this, get as close as I can, put your finger over it. Okay, there we go. If it gets bent, just straighten it out. That is going to get attached. The one thing I'd like to mention here, it's almost better to add all your components to these little loops before you hard work them. When you start hammering them, they get harder, and so it can be more difficult to open these loops back up. This one I've gone ahead and closed off. This one is still a little open. You can see a little space there. So I'm going to take my ear wire and I'm going to go ahead and put it in here, run it down, and run it down to the other end. Okay, so there's for my ear wire. And now this little guy will come on here, come down to the end. Then I have to grab my round nose and close that loop off. Okay, and there it is. I think I went a little too far. So what I can do is take this over to the anvil, and when I hammer that, it'll flatten it down. Or I can just take the round nose and bring it up a little, okay? Now it's flat. Okay. There's the earring. So basically, you saw what I just did with this. I took my piece of 3-inch wire, I put it through the stone. Now on this one, I didn't tie it off until I added the unicorn. You won't have to do that on here. You're going to make a loop on this side, then you're going to make a loop on this side, and then you're just going to attach them through the loop, and then you will close the loop off. So this is how I made this entire set. Again, I would recommend you get some softer wire, maybe a 22 gauge copper, and practice. Practice this little, I don't know what you call this, squiggly, whatever you want to call it. Let's call it squiggly, okay? Practice. It's pretty easy. If you don't want to do these loops, and again, I'm using these loops as my closure too. That's going around my neck just like that, okay? On the bracelet, this is going around and going in here like that. That is what's closing it on. It's also the clasp. So one end is the lock and the other end is the key, so to speak, okay? All right, so everybody, let's see if there's any questions. And sometimes, you know, these things will move around, so you just have to flatten them back out. But when you put it on, there's nowhere for it to go. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions, and then we're going to move on to the next project. I've gone ahead and cut a piece of 20 gauge wire, and I just wanted to show you, maybe you don't like my design here and you'd like to come up with your own design. You could always do round circles, you could always do squares, you could even do the Greek key. So let's say you wanted to do circles. You would take your round nose pliers and you would go ahead, get as close to the end as you can, and you would go ahead and start with your little circles. Everybody see that? Your little loop, so to speak, okay? Now we can't keep using the round nose pliers because we'll be making jump rings. We don't want to make jump rings. We want to make a flat connector. So you can use your, I'm not sure it matters whether you use your flat nose or your chain nose, but what you're going to do is you're going to grab onto that and you're going to start rotating the wire up. this 22 gauge, I'm probably, this is 20, I should have used 22. All right, I'm going to use my chain nose. I'm really grabbing onto it. This is a big piece of wire. I'm holding it and I'm bending that wire up. Then I'm going to I'm going to reposition and I'm going to bend that wire up with my thumb. Reposition, really got to hold it down, bend the wire up. Reposition, hold it tight, bend the wire up. Some people like to use the nylons so that they don't mar the wire. So again, reposition, bend the wire up, reposition, bend the wire up, reposition, bend the wire up. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing because they're inside the pliers, but I'm just holding on to that wire and then, God, I hate these shadows, rotating it around. Okay, so let's do it a couple more times. Then I'm going to show you another trick. So, holding it in there, pushing it up with my thumb. Repositioning, pushing up with my thumb. Repositioning, pushing up with my thumb. Repositioning, pushing up with my thumb. And you're just making sure that you're really hugging the side of the coil that you already have started there, okay? So here's my coil, here's my nice little coil. Let's say that now we want to add a square around that coil. How would we do that? Okay, we're going to grab our chain nose pliers and we're going to put the tip right up against that coil. And we're going to fold it away from us and have it parallel with the floor. Then we're going to reposition our pliers and we're going to have it right at the end of that circle, and we're going to push that wire away from us and parallel with the floor. Okay? Then we're going to reposition. We're going to put our pliers right at the end of that circle, and we're going to push the wire away parallel with the floor. I got a little farther away on that one. Okay. Right at the end of the circle. Maybe I'll come out a little bit. Make the Greek key. Okay. Lining it up with the end of the box that's there, pushing it away from me, lining it up with the end of the box that's there, pushing it away from me. And so you can make little boxes without having any fancy tool. Let's say you wanted to start off making boxes straight from the get-go. How would you do that? Pretty simple. I sometimes like to use the chain nose, and I think I have a small, I know I do, I don't know where I put them. It's a small pair. I can't find them right now, of course, so let's go ahead and use the chain nose, okay? So I'm just going to grab the end, and I'm going to bend it away from me. So I've made a little notch. Then I'm going to grab the end. I'm going to line that up with what I just bent, and I'm going to bend that away from me. Then I'm going to grab it again, and I'm going to bend that away from me. Okay? So I have the beginnings of my square. You see that? Okay. Then I'm going to put my pliers down again. Now this time I have to position, I have to come over a little. Okay? So I'm trying to line it up with exactly where it stopped, and I'm going to push that down flat. Okay? Then I'm going to reposition. Now, if I do it like this, if I bring it all the way flat against there, that's going to be a pretty big gap. See it? So that might be too big of a gap. Or maybe you like that. I don't know. Let's put it, try to put it right there. We're going to bend it down again. All right. And we're going to, so maybe not quite as far, although I think that'd make a fun pair of earrings. So I'm going to go ahead. So maybe on the sides I'll make it tighter. So instead of going that whole distance, I'm just going to go a little bit of a distance. And I'm able to make that little box. So again, if I go the whole distance, I'm going to have an equal amount every time. And if I just try to eyeball it, just pushing it away, okay? You could make some paper clips, that'd be kind of fun. Well, that might be fun, I don't know. Pushing it away, okay? So there's my box. Here's another box. You could hammer it, it could be really cool. Another thing you could do is you could do a triangle, same exact way. You know, there's a way to keep this wire. Just give it a shake. There it is. All right. So let's say we wanted to do a triangle. No problem. Fold that away. Then I'm just going to come down to here. I'm going to fold that up. So you're just going to keep repositioning your pliers and folding your wire. Okay? I know Crystal had wanted to see what could be done with the large hole earrings. So I want to show you one project that I came up with. This is a 20 gauge. I like to use 18, but this is a 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to cut 3 inches off. Okay, then I like to use a 1/2 inch on each end. So I'm going to hold my pliers down and I'm going to bend that in. Then I'm going to go to the other side. I want a 1/2 inch. I'm going to hold my pliers and I'm going to bend that in. So I'm going to have something that basically looks like this. Then I'm going to lay that down on my ruler and I'm going to find my center, which is right about there. And I'm going to grab my round nose and I'm just going to push that away from me. So I've kind of made a triangle. This might take a couple pieces of practice, a couple times of practice. Then really all I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch those ends. Yeah, that's too big, so I got to trim that, okay? So this one I can see I made too big. Let's see how I did on the other one. They're probably both too big. Yeah, they're both too big. Okay. So basically all I'm doing is I'm pinching these through. So take them off. And I'm just going to trim those ends off. Alright, let's try this again. So one side's going to go there. And the other side's going to go there, and I'm going to pinch it together. Now, I've made a bunch of these, and I have never had one come apart. But what's holding it in there? Nothing. Nothing is holding it in there. So if you were really, really, really worried that it could come apart, you could grab some, like a 22 gauge, cut off a little piece, and loop it through there. You can make a loop here. Let's see, how do I want to do that? Not sure how I'm going to do that. Actually, what if I brought it through here? That might be interesting. Brought that up and around like that, and brought that up and around like that. I mean, you could, wrap these in you could. I have never had a pair come apart on me. So if you were worried they would come apart, you could wrap those in. But I've made several pairs. Now granted, these are sterling and the wire might be a little harder, but you know, every now and then I just pinch them in. But if I have, it's almost a half of an inch going in through the center of the bead, and it's a good sturdy wire, it's not gonna, I've never had them come apart on me. Okay, so that's one way that I did that. Another way, let's see, do I have another? Let me just pull this out. Okay, so you saw how I did that. Pretty simple, right? Okay. Another thing that I did was I took some wire and I jumped my chain on. So again, I would probably grab a 22, something that's going to be really easy for me to use, and I'm going to make my loop. Then I'm going to come up and over. And before I tie this off, I'm going to add my chain. Then I'm going to put it through here, and I'm going to do my loop. And before I tie that off, before I wrap it around, I'm going to add my chain, and I end up with that. Okay? Very simple project. So there's two different ways that you can make these earrings. And like I said, if you're worried that you're going to lose your bead, you could take some 22, 24 even gauge, and you could bring it through the hole and really just wrap it around a few times and incorporate that into your design. If you can find some of these the ball earrings I was telling you about on Amazon, I have a little ball right here. You don't even have to use a jump ring to get these on your ear wires.